very good afternoon to each and every one. Also those joining online. I'm so glad you've joined us for our program this afternoon. Now, something my wife and we enjoy doing is watching YouTube videos on homesteading or country living, micro farming, even tiny houses. I don't know how many of you also enjoy watching YouTube videos like that. Now, there is something lacking on YouTube is South African examples of country living. It's always, there are a few, but it's often far away overseas, America, somewhere else. And I think we need more real life examples here, people we know in our own context. So that's why I'm really excited about this afternoon program, where we can hear testimonies of how God has led people that we know of, and they can share what they've learned about their journey with us. So we'll have two families sharing with us this afternoon in this particular slot. It's Ravano and Cindy Jean-Pierre, and also the Klix family. But before I hand over to Ravano and Cindy, let us open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time that we can share together and listen to other people's stories. Lord, I pray that you would guide the families as they share their journey and their experience with us. I pray that your Holy Spirit would lead us and help us to learn lessons from their experience. We pray for your blessing now in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, church. So maybe I must start with a disclaimer to tell you that we are by no means experts at country living. We are on a journey to get to country living. So we're going to share with you where our journey started and where we are now, and how God has led on this journey that we've been on. So we're going to start off quite some time in the past, quite a number of years ago, and then we'll work our way to where we are at this point in time. So I hope you will pray for us while we share our testimony with you, because we are very, very nervous here in front at this point in time. Okay, so both Cindy and myself, we were quite active in our home church where we grew up in. As we grew up, we got baptized there. Eventually, we got married there. We served in various departments, deaconry, Sabbath school, youth, health departments, and so on. And then we got to a point, in our lives, which happens to many people, where you have to now go and move to Joburg because of work. It wasn't the best thing that happened to us, but yeah, it happened. So while we were preparing to move to Joburg, we had no idea what life was like in Joburg, except what we used to see on the news. So we were a bit concerned that maybe our spiritual life would take a bit of a dip moving to Joburg. That's just the impression that we had. But we were actually very surprised, pleasantly surprised, when we got to Joburg as to what we found. When we got there, first thing we found was that the conference bookshop was well stocked with lots and lots of Seventh-day Adventist literature, with lots of Spirit of Prophecy books, DVDs, and there was just an abundance of material. We also found that the churches were on fire for the Lord. They were engaged in outreach programs, in witnessing. We also found that the different districts that the churches were divided into were very active, and they were having regular district camp meetings at Sedaven, for those of you who know the area. So we were quite surprised, and we found ourselves learning so much. We came across different sets of DVDs, many of which I'm sure you will know, like the series from Mark Woodman, God's Final Call. If you haven't watched it yet, I do encourage you to try and get it. We also We also got a hold of Walter Faith's Total Onslaught series, Creation series, and so forth. And being on our own, just the two of us before we had a family, not having much family or friends in Joburg, we had a lot of time on our hands. So we used that time to watch all of these DVDs. I think God's Final Call, which is 24 lectures, I think it took us a week to get through the entire series. So yeah, so that's what we did. So it was a time in our lives where, our spiritual knowledge was increasing rapidly. Things that we had not learned in church growing up, we were now learning at a very fast pace. Then at one of these district camp meetings at Sedaven, when we drove in at the gate, we saw that the place was decorated with these banners for like the topic of the camp meeting, if you can call it that. And everywhere they had these banners up, and the banners simply said, "It is time." And the lectures or the sermons was presented by Pastor Alden Ho from the USA. I think he's with Doug Batchelor now. But yeah, he was presenting the lectures, and we grew up, we heard about country living, but not like this. We always thought of, there's country living, there's the health message, there's all of these messages. But there was no real tangible way of getting there. There was no plan on actually going through and doing it. We never thought about how we could practically make it happen. But after this camp meeting, and this is quite a number of years ago, about 2008, after this camp meeting, the country living message was brought to the front of our minds, and it was something that we started to think about more often. Then we'll fast forward about 2 years later. Our prayers were answered, and we got to move back home to Cape Town. And we decided we were going to start a family. And I can remember that we discussed together, myself and Cindy, that we needed to start looking out for a country home. And we had been reading lots of books. I'll put some of them up. I'm sure you know many of them. Books like Adventist Home, Child Guidance, Country Living, and so forth. And there was such a lot of information that we got from these books. And there's many parents sitting here, and I know that you will be able to relate with us that we all want the best for our children. And when we read these things in these books, we were compelled that this was the way that we needed to go. So I'm going to hand over to Cindy to share with you a few quotes that stood out for us, and we hope it will be an encouragement to you as well.
Yes, just as Ravona was saying, these books were of real value to us because we were starting to read and see the value, and we could apply it in our homes, and you can see the difference. So these were the quotes that stood out for us with regards to country living. Okay, and this comes from Country Living, page 12. Let children no longer be exposed to the temptations of the cities that are ripe for destruction. The Lord has sent us warning and counsel to get out of the cities. Then let us make no more investments in the cities. Fathers and mothers, how do you regard the souls of your children? Are you preparing the members of your families for translation into the heavenly courts? Are you preparing them to become members of the royal family? Children of the heavenly King, what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? How will ease, comfort, convenience compare with the value of the souls of your children? Okay. My next quote comes from Education, page 21. And this is about the secrets of life. This was the first Eden, or first garden given to Adam and Eve. To Adam and Eve was committed the key of the garden, to dress it and keep it. Genesis 2, verse 15. Though rich in all that the owner of the universe could supply, they were not to be idle. Useful occupation was appointed them as a blessing to strengthen the body, to expand the mind, and to develop the character. So even here, at this stage where there was no sin, there was still that development of character that we see coming up. The book of nature, which spread its living lessons before them, afforded an exhaustless source of instruction and delight. On every leaf of the forest and stone of the mountains, in every shining star, in earth and sea and sky, God's name was written, both for animate and inanimate creation, with leaf and flower and tree, and with every living creature, from the leviathan of the waters to the mote in the sunbeam. The dwellers in Eden held converse, gathering from each the secrets of life. Then again in Country Living, page 12, let no temporal advantages tempt parents to neglect the training of their children. Whenever possible, it is the duty of parents to make homes in the country for their children. The children and youth should be carefully guarded. They should be kept away from the hotbeds of iniquity that are to be found in our cities. Let them be surrounded by the influences of a true Christian home, a home where Christ abides. So you can see the contrast between the city and the early Eden home, where character is developed in the country setting. And then also in Adventist home, we find, so long as God gives me power to speak to our people, I shall continue to call upon parents to leave the cities and get homes in the country, where they can cultivate the soil and learn from the book of nature the lessons of purity and simplicity. The things of nature are God's silent ministers, given to us to teach us spiritual truths. And then this is the last one I'll be reading for now, but probably one of the most important ones that was also shared this morning with Pastor Donovan. Better than any other inheritance of wealth you can give to your children will be the gift of a healthy body, a sound mind, and noble character. Those who understand what constitutes life's true success will be wise betimes. They will keep in view life's best things in the choice of a home.
Thank you, Cindy. So even though we read all of these things, we didn't know what was considered country. We didn't know how far we needed to go. We didn't know where we needed to go. And we also didn't know how we were going to get there. But we knew that we needed to start the process. So we started by visiting various places which we considered country. Some of them were very close by, and others were a little bit further away. I made a list of some of the places that I could remember that we went to. We went close by to places like Malmesbury, Kalbaskraal, a little bit further out like Eisefontein, Montague, Ashton, Swellendam. We even went on the other side of the mountain in the Koo Valley, the Cedarburg, Pakketburg, Eendekale, Koekenaap, Tolbach, Goude, Robertson, McGregor, Verliesdorp, and the list goes on. So we spent a lot of time out on the road visiting these different places. Sometimes we would go, there wouldn't even be something for sale in the area, but we thought, let's just go and have a look at the area. But most times we would try and couple our visits together with looking at potential properties that was for sale. I can remember one of the places we visited. It was in the Koo Valley, and I hope Cindy will share some of her thoughts on this one. So the Koo Valley is the valley on the other side of Robertson. Robertson is on this side of the mountain, so on the other side, it's a long way to get there. But basically, I remember it was about a week or two after Shauna's first birthday, and we made an appointment, and it was on a Sunday morning. We took this long drive to get there. It was well over 2 hours, and the farm was quite promising, especially on the advert. It was about 10 hectares, at least 10 hectares, probably a little bit more. It had hundreds of established fruit-bearing trees on the farm already. There was a ball, and there was lots of other things that you would expect to find on a farm. And then there was this house that you could see had just been built. There was this man, the owner. He seemed to be maybe in his late 50s. He had a very British accent, and it was very obvious that he was trying to do country living, but his project didn't work out. He had run out of money. So the house, just to finish the house, we could see that where there were supposed to be windows, he actually just built it up. probably because bricks were cheaper than windows. So the house was in a very sad state. There was the kitchen area and the bedroom area was actually one big open plan living area. And I was quite interested to see where the bathroom was. And then we were led through a passage to where the bathroom was, and the toilet was made up of a few bricks stacked on top of each other with a bucket in the middle and a toilet seat on top of the bricks. So this was a real eye-opener for us to the reality that jumping straight into this country living project without proper planning and thought could easily go horribly wrong. So we knew that we would need prayer and guidance by the Holy Spirit. Otherwise, we would make a complete failure at this. We also had no extra money just sitting there in the bank to go out and buy a farm. We had no idea about farming. We had a house in the city, which largely still belonged to the bank, more than what it belonged to us. And I was the only one employed at the time, as we just started a family, and Cindy was a stay-at-home mom looking after Shauna. And there were some restrictions in terms of how we were going to make our decisions, because I still needed to be within driving distance of work. You know, COVID didn't hit yet, so working from home wasn't invented at that time. So it was really obvious that we were going to need to think this story through, and we would need to have quite a good plan. As we were studying these books and reading over and over, you know, the Holy Spirit leads you to find more information. And we came across this quote because initially we were trying to do this very fast. We were very urgent about it, and we thought the end is coming and we need to be out of the city. But then we came across another quote which I'd ask Cindy to share with you.
But I would just like to mention that it was also a relief that we were on the same page after viewing this house in the Koo Valley, because I'm not sure how we would have made it. Okay. So I'll read to you the quote from Country Living, page 26. Let everyone take time to consider carefully and not be like the man in the parable who began to build and was not able to finish. Not a move should be made, but that movement and all that it pertains are carefully considered. Everything weighed. To every man was given his work according to his several ability. Then let him not move hesitantly, but firmly, and yet humbly trusting in God. There may be individuals who will make a rush to do something and enter into some business they know nothing about. This God does not require. Think candidly, prayerfully, studying the word with all carefulness and prayerfulness, with mind and heart, awake to hear the voice of God. To understand the will of God is a great thing.
Yes, so it is important for couples that are going out to do country living. You both have to agree on the place that you are going to. So, you know, we still didn't have all the answers, and we didn't have a proper plan. We didn't even know what all we should plan for. But we started to include country living and the concerns we had in our family prayers. You know, the things that we were concerned about that we didn't have answers for. I've got 5 main areas. There were many, but 5 main areas. The first one was work or an income source. The second one was we needed money to purchase the place, or at least to build something once we did purchase the place. And then also finding the right country home. I've mentioned all the areas we visited before, and the many hundreds of properties we viewed online. So that was something that we needed guidance in. We also saw that there's going to be a lot of skills that is required once you do find yourself out there in the country. You won't be able to just, you know, pick up the phone every time and get somebody to come and help you, or to deliver a service. Most things you'll have to do for yourself. And then another thing that we also thought about was, once we are out there, what kind of outreach would we do? You know, there's no point in going out to do country living and it just benefits you and your family. We need to be a blessing to the community around us as well. So looking back now, you know, we can really see the hand of God leading in all the decisions that we've made. And I'd like to share some of it with you. With a work situation, for example, it just so happened that my work situation started to become quite difficult. I was needing to travel quite extensively and spend quite a bit of time away from home. Most weeks, I would be away from home for a couple of days. Local trips around the country became a weekly routine, and then international trips where I needed to be away from home for sometimes more than a week at a time. It started to take its toll on our young family. And after a series of back-to-back international trips, I decided it's going to be time for me to leave this job and to try something different. And this wasn't planned, so I could see that this was the Holy Spirit's working in our lives. So after 18 years in the FMCG food industry, I resigned and I decided to start my own consulting company. And that's where I find myself now. So although now I have much more flexibility, I'm still required to be in the city or some city from time to time working at my clients, but I'm in a far better position where country living is now possible. Then I had a long section that I wrote here about money, and then I deleted it all. And I'm going to read the one line that I've got left here. So all I can tell you is that God provides. As long as we put in our honest effort, we can be sure that God will provide. So we realize that doing country living will come with its own challenges, especially for people like us. You know, we were born in the city, we grew up in the city, we've never lived on a farm, we don't have any experience in living in a rural area, so we needed to upskill in lots of practical skills. So I decided to start teaching myself, while I was still living in the city, the things that I thought I would need to know once I get to the country. It's far easier for you to learn when you're in a comfortable space compared to once you're out there in the city, once you're out there in the country and things go wrong. For example, if you're off the grid and something happens to your power supply, you know, that's going to be a very stressful situation. Or if your water supply, if something goes wrong with your pipes or your pumps or your valves or things like that, you already need to have some experience on how to quickly get things back up and running. So I decided to start teaching myself different skills, things like being water-wise, water reticulation, electricity generation, construction, constructing with wood frames and new tech, etc., etc. So basically trying to get myself to be as self-sufficient as possible and to be able to fix things without having to spend too much money and to call in too many people to assist. And our goal was to try and get enough experience so that we would be able to live off the grid. And I remember that in the beginning, just thinking about living off the grid was very intimidating. But as time went on and as we gained these different skills, it is not that intimidating anymore. So the next thing that we were praying about was finding a country home. So here, I would like to ask if you believe that miracles still happen today. So I'm going to explain to you how our country living miracle happened. So we've been looking for a country home for a long time. Like I told you, Shauna was about 1 year old, and even before she was born, I can remember I had a small little two-seater bakkie, and me and Cindy was driving through the countryside looking at different country options. So it had been many years, about 10 years, before we found our country home. And at times, I can assure you, it became very depressing. We would find a country home or a country plot somewhere that was really wonderful, that ticked all the boxes that we wanted it to be. But then it would be with a price tag that was totally astronomical and was just not an option. Other times, we would find places that was the perfect price. We could afford it. We could buy it the next day. But then we would find that the place was not nice, or the surroundings were extremely unsafe. So then that would no longer be an option. Sorry.
Too much spraying.
Oh yes, I'm going to get to that one now, yes. Then we came across a place just outside Piketberg in a little small place called Indekale. And this seemed to be the perfect option. The price was slightly high, but it was within reach. The entire farm was off-grid. It had its own water source, its own electricity generation setup. It already had quite a decent house, fairly newly built, very different to the one we saw in the Koo Valley. And besides the newly built house, it also had I'm calling it a historic building. The building looked like it was 100 years old, but it was just in need of a little bit of renovation, and you could turn it into something. So there was so much potential. There was already fruit trees, there were vegetable patches, there was a greenhouse, everything that you sort of need for country living and the way that Adventists would like to do country living. And then, as we were walking around the farm, we saw that the neighboring citrus farms were spraying their crops. And this was in walking distance from where this particular farm was that we were on. So if we had to buy this farm, and during season, when they're spraying their crops, we would be breathing in all these chemicals. So once again, we had to keep looking. We got to a point where we were tired of looking. We decided that maybe instead of our plans to get a big country home or a big piece of land, we should maybe settle for something smaller. So we decided to put our plans on hold for a large country farm, or whatever you want to call it. And we weren't looking for an extremely big farm. We were looking for something like, around about 1 hectare, just some space for city people like us to feel like we're on a farm somewhere. But then we decided, okay, let's leave that idea and let's just look for a residential plot in a small little country town somewhere. So one of the towns we visited quite often, and we actually quite liked the town, was the town of Porterville. It was a place we went to quite often because we enjoy camping, we enjoy nature and the outdoors, and one of our favorite camping spots was just outside Porterville. So we decided to look to see what was available in terms of residential properties. And very quickly, we found one that we liked. We planned a trip to go out and to go and view. The price was good, the location was good, and we decided we looked long enough for what we wanted. Maybe we should settle for this plot. And I can remember that we discussed it, we prayed about it, and we decided we'll sign the offer to purchase for this plot. So during the week following us viewing this plot, I was sitting at my desk going through the documents that the agent sent that we needed to fill in and we needed to sign. I was probably halfway through filling in and signing most of the documents that we needed to sign when Cindy called me. And I think maybe Cindy must just give a brief summary of what happened there.
Okay, so as Ravana said, we were a bit tired of looking for property, and somehow I still continued to look, and I found this property on a website that's not very common. I don't, in actual fact, I hardly remember the website anymore. I'm not sure if you remember, but it's not a very familiar website. And in fact, it was the very last advert on the website.
On the last page?
On the last page, yes. It was the very last one. And it was in Porterville, and I was quite excited because it's still in Porterville. It's a bigger property. And then, but it was very big. But I tried. I thought I'll ask Ravano to see what he thinks, and I thought he would be just as excited as I was.
So I wasn't really excited because I was so tired of looking for a country plot. And also, as she was talking to me over the phone, I was on my laptop and I went on the website and I found the ad. And you know where it gives you the price? It didn't have a price, it just had the letters POA. So normally when I see those letters, price on application, I just scroll past because I knew it was going to be way out of my budget. As we were talking on the phone, I continued to read through the ad, and then I saw the size of the farm. It was like 30 hectares. Now in Porterville, those of you who know the area, a farm that size, you know, is just totally out of the reach of a normal person like us. So the cost was just, it was obviously going to be too high. So I told her, look, Cindy, my wife of many years, we are wasting our time with this plot. I don't even think I'm going to phone them now. But Cindy insisted, and I think we were both feeling a bit sad that we put our dream on hold, if you could call it that, because now we settled for the small little residential plot. So, you know, I agreed. I will contact the agent. I didn't think that it would go anywhere. And after I put the phone down with Cindy, I called the agent. I called the number. The agent answered, and I asked if the property was still for sale. Surprisingly, the agent said yes, the property is still for sale. And then he didn't give me the total price, because probably it was going to take too long to say that long number. So he just told me what the price was per square meter. I started doing the calculation, and then I thought, there's no point in even finishing that calculation. So I asked the agent, you know, there's no way that I can afford this farm. But what I want to know is there no maybe portion of this farm that it can be sold separately? Is there no, because sometimes there's multiple title deeds on a farm. And, you know, that was me clutching at straws because I didn't have much hope at this point in time. But to my amazement, he actually said, yes, there is a couple of title deeds. There's a smaller one, which is just under a hectare. So now I was really excited, so I became a bit brave. I asked him, okay, so what would the price be for the smaller section? Because obviously, you know, if you're buying a huge piece of land, the price per square meter is quite low, but if you buy a smaller piece, the price per square meter goes up, so it becomes more expensive. And then I think I became paralyzed for a few seconds because he told me, no, the price per square meter is exactly the same for the smaller piece. And then just to make sure that there was no confusion, I did the calculation on a calculator to get to the total price for the smaller piece, and then I told him the price back, and I said, okay, so that piece will cost X amount. And he said, yes, that's right, that's the price. So now I was very excited. So I told him, okay, here's my details, please send me the information, we are very interested. And I was so excited, I immediately called Cindy back and told her what happened. We continued to pray about it, and eventually we got to the point where we signed the offer to purchase, and we still weren't sure if this was really going to happen because it was just too good to be true. The price was so ridiculously low for this piece of land. But the seller actually accepted our offer, and he signed the papers as well. And the next step was now it had to go through the different channels and eventually to the deeds office. And at this time, COVID-19 happened, and everything stopped. And I was thinking, sure, we got so far now. Maybe the seller's going to decide he's made a mistake. But anyway, we continued to trust, and the whole sale was delayed because the deed office closed, and then they reopened with skeleton staff, and there was a huge backlog. But eventually, our deal actually went through. And now we have a small little piece of land out in the country. Maybe I can tell you that the price we paid for our dream piece of country land was the same price we were going to pay for the residential plot. So I ask you again, do you believe miracles can happen? So where we are currently, we're currently in the process of constructing, let's call it a temporary home. It's a wood frame structure, which I'll maybe show you a photo of later, which is Nutec cladded, that we're hoping to use as temporary accommodation. Temporary might be a long time, so we're trying to build it as good as possible. While we get to a point where we will build a main brick house as God allows. You know, we still don't have all the answers, but we know that we must move forward. So our journey continues. God had made a way for us to obtain this country smallholding. The amazing thing is that, as I told you, it ended up being the same price that we would have paid for the small little residential plot. We know that this was definitely an answer to our prayers. It was almost as if this piece of land was waiting there just for us. Shortly after we purchased the plot, the seller actually took the rest of the land off the market, and it's no longer for sale. We want you to know that we were not lucky, we were blessed. So we give God all the praise, the honor, and the glory. I think that's a summary of our testimony and where we are. You want to add anything, Sunday? No. What we want to also do is, you know, as you go along this journey, you hear lots of different things. As Pastor Donovan was saying earlier, you know, you spend a lot of time researching, watching videos, YouTube videos and so on, and trying to learn from different people. But we also came across some information that you might have heard that we just want to go through so that nobody is led to go down the wrong path. You may have heard some people say that the time for country living is not now, that we need to wait for the Sunday law before we move to the country. I've even seen some sermons being preached on this online. I think it's important for us to just briefly take a look at where this comes from and the mistake that is being made here. Let's first maybe look at the quote that is being used when people say that now is not the time to move to the country. Maybe, Cindy, you can read this quote for us.
Okay, and it comes from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 464. And it says, it is now time. Okay. It is no time now for God's people to be fixing their affections or laying up their treasure in the world. The time is not far distant. Like the early disciples, we shall be forced to seek a refuge in desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retired homes in secluded places among the mountains. And now, instead of seeking expensive dwellings here, we should be preparing to move to a better country, even a heavenly.
Okay, so in the messages that I've watched so far, where they use this extract to say that now is not the time to move to the country, they're using the story of the siege of Jerusalem. This quote is taken from Testimonies for the Church, and it's also in Country Living. But I think what has happened here is people have not studied in detail what Ellen White is referring to here. So let us quickly just take a closer look at this extract. What we need to do is, and Brother Paul touched on it in his sermon today, we need to look at what happened at the siege of Jerusalem. Now, you know, you can read in Desire of Ages, chapter 69. We are told, and as Brother Paul mentioned in his sermon earlier today, that during that siege, not one Christian was killed. They all escaped. Now, why did they escape? Because they obeyed the warning that they were given. And the warning was found in Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 to 20. They were warned that when they see the Roman army planting their standards or their banners, which depicted their pagan gods, when they saw these banners being planted in the holy ground around the city, that was to be their sign to flee. Now, how do you flee if the Romans are surrounding the city? Now, when we go back and we look at what happened during the siege, we see that the Roman general Cestius, he had the city surrounded, he planted his banners outside of the city, and the Christians immediately noticed, the Christians, the followers of Jesus Christ, they noticed that this was the sign to leave the city. But you cannot escape if the city is surrounded. So a very strange thing happened. Cestius decided to take his army and go back to Rome. So the siege was lifted. Immediately, this gave the Christians the opportunity they needed to escape. 3.5 years later, another Roman general, Titus, he returned with the Roman army. And again, the city was under siege. But this time, nobody escaped, and the city was utterly destroyed. So if we look at the sign to move to the country in relation to this story, the siege of Jerusalem, and if the events are to be similar, there must be two parts. There must be an attempt for the papal Sabbath or the Sunday law to be implemented, followed by a second event where it will actually be implemented. So when we look back in history, we find that, and I'm sure many of you will know this, we find that in 1888, the US Senate tried to implement a national Sunday law. And then there was an Adventist by the name of Alonzo T. Jones. We all know him as A.T. Jones. And he was sent to argue, and the bill was not passed. Brother Paul, if we have a few minutes, I'd like to just play a clip where they've reenacted his debate that he had with the Senate at the time.
1888, Senator Henry Blair of New Hampshire proposed legislation to limit secular activities on Sundays within the jurisdiction of the United States federal government. Senator Blair made it clear that the aim of his bill was to preserve the first day of the week as a day of rest and religious observance. The bill was referred to the Senate Committee on Education and Labor, where Blair was chairman. Among those who raised objections to the proposed legislation was Alonzo T. Jones.
Sir, you may speak of the power of the majority in social and civil matters, but there is no majority, however large, that can invade the territory of a man's religion. Not in this land, not under our Constitution.
Mr. Jones, you fail to recognize the right, or more importantly, the responsibility of the state to protect the welfare of the people as a whole.
Senator, it seems that you fail to recognize the clear distinction between man's responsibility to the state and his duty toward God. The first, he must render under the force of law. The second, duty to God must be carried out only under the force of love, and that freely, voluntarily. No law can command love.
But the law of the state must protect the people to carry out their duty to God. Our Sunday law is written to ensure the preservation of the Lord's Day for the benefit of the people.
An admirable goal, Senator Blair, but completely unnecessary. Our Constitution already recognizes the rights of the people with respect to their religion. Your Sunday law would add nothing to our fundamental freedoms. It would rather add restrictions.
I'm afraid, sir, that you are blind to the realities of our age. If men owe a duty to God and do not willingly perform it, they become a corrupting influence in society.
This proposed Sunday law would have a corrupting influence by introducing force and coercion into its observance.
On the contrary, the intended effect is to enhance the Sabbath. If men do not consent to honor the Lord's Day, if their actions on that day are unrestrained by civil law, excuse me, then they trample on the very rights of those who would honor and observe the day as holy unto the Lord.
With all due respect, Senator, can you not see that your Sunday bill proposes to trample on the rights of the religious minorities? Do you really want to revert to those dark ages where church and state united to force men to violate their conscience and conform to an officially established religion?
Now, that is an unworthy comparison, sir. Our Sunday law is for the ultimate benefit of the whole society. Is it not a legitimate function of the state to legislate on behalf of the common good?
The common good of which you value so highly is not served by restricting the rights of one man's conscience in order to enlarge the rights of another. It is best served by the freedoms upon which this republic was established. State-sponsored religious coercion defies the clear intent of the Founding Fathers.
But this law provides an exemption for those who wish to worship on another day. Jews, Seventh-day Baptists, your Seventh-day Adventists, for example, who observe Saturday as the Sabbath. So where's the problem?
The problem is...
Why, just this morning, a Mrs. Batum of the Women's Christian Temperance Union addressed this committee in support of such an exemption. She has conferred with representatives of 9 different groups who observe Saturday rather than Sunday, and you know how many of those approved the exemption? All of them. Every single one.
Senator, I have great respect for the temperance principles promoted by Mrs. Batum's organization, but she does not speak for my denomination on the question of exemptions.
Come now, Professor Jones, are you about to object to exemptions that would certainly benefit your group and several others?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, we do object. An exemption clause would not change the proposed law so as to modify our opposition. Here is the principle, Senator. If the law were just and perfect, an exemption would not be necessary. Another thing, an exemption clause is nothing other than a toleration clause in disguise. Toleration is not liberty. It is merely a form of condescension, the majority putting up with the opinions and convictions of the minority. Our Constitution guarantees not tolerance, but rights, and we claim those rights as American citizens.
Mr. Jones, without yielding the point, let me move to another question. How would you react if we were to rewrite this bill as a Saturday law, with Saturday as the Sabbath, not Sunday at all? I suppose you would take a very different position.
To the contrary, Senator. All laws that attempt to force the conscience are manifestly unchristian and unconstitutional by their very nature. Therefore, Senator, we are against every Sunday law that has ever been made since the first one enacted by Constantine to the one you are proposing now. And if you changed it from a Sunday law to a Saturday law, we would oppose it just as firmly.
I think I'll stop it there. You can, obviously this was a reenactment, but you can hear, and Alonzo T. Jones's testimony before the Senate is documented. You can hear that the Holy Spirit was leading him during this time. The bill was not passed, but this was the sign to leave the cities. The next time we hear of a Sunday law, the army surrounding the city will not leave. The end will come, and it will be time to run to the mountains. The end time events will be rapid movements. You know, even when we look at the quotes in the book Country Living, and the nice thing about the quotes is they all end with the dates that Ellen White made those quotes or wrote those statements. Before the year 1888, when we read the things Ellen White wrote about country living, for example, in her quote in 1885, the one that Cindy read earlier, it started off with, it was very gentle. It said, the time is not far distant. Okay? That was in 1885. Then let's look at some of the quotes or some of the things she wrote after 1888. In 1906, we see the message is becoming more urgent. She says, out of the cities, exclamation mark. And if you would like some of these quotes, I can share it with you afterwards. So waiting for Sunday law in our time is a mistake. The sign has already been fulfilled. It is time for us to move out of the cities to the country. You know, even when we look at our own experience as an example, and I know everybody's experience is different, it took us a very long time to find a country home. How much time will we have after the Sunday law is enforced in the USA? You know, Revelation 13, verse 16 and 17, which Brother Paul also touched on in his sermon today, it tells us that only those who have the mark of the beast will be able to buy and sell. So soon, after the Sunday law, there will be no way that we'll be able to sell our homes or buy homes in the countries, in the countryside. So whatever move we are to make, we need to make that move now. Brothers and sisters, the sign to move out of the city has long passed. I pray that God would lead you as you contemplate this message of country living. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always lovely to hear the personal testimonies and the stories. It's encouraging. Brother, we really appreciate that. Appreciate the clips. Does everybody want to stand up for a minute before we go into the next story? We're going to be doing this as a family. We're going to be showing quite a lot of pictures. So if you wanted to come a little bit closer, feel free now to come up to the front. And yeah, we'll be doing it as a family. So thank you. Okay, so yeah. Okay, I've been told that we must stand in the middle. So okay, so have we got a mic, Josh? Okay, yeah, what was playing there was the video of us basically arriving at our farm. So we're going to go through, show you pictures, tell you, and then if you guys have got any questions or something, you're welcome to stop us and say, Paul, what about this and how did that work and how did you do that, etc. And one thing I do want to say is the call to country living is not to become a farmer. A lot of us think that the call to country living is to become farmers. It's not to become farmers. It's to get out into the country. It's to get out of the sinful influences that are taking place in the city and contrast it with the tranquility of nature and being with God and having time with God. It's not a call to farm. And I really appreciate that one quote you read there. The one about, do not try and attempt some sort of business you know nothing about. Man, that is such a valuable quote. A lot of people say, but there's so many failures. But you've got to look at what caused these people to fail. What was behind there? And I want to tell you now, that is such a good quote. I just definitely must use it more often. Don't attempt a business you don't know. Don't go out there and think now you're going to become a farmer and make money. Because there's a good book. I can actually give you a good book about how to make a fortune. You go farming with a big fortune, and then you'll be left with a little fortune, right? One of the quickest ways to lose money is farming. Ask Paul. Where's Paul? There you go, Paul. How much money did you make out of your broccoli?
The formula I was telling you, double plus half. How much is it going to cost? Double plus half. How much is it going to take? Double plus half.
And Brother Fico was telling me, he wants our watermelons. And I told him, for every watermelon he gives me 100 Rand, I'm donating him 400 Rand. And it's not that far from the truth. So we're not called to become farmers. That's not the call, right? I respect farming as one of the most challenging business careers you can have. Let's just have a prayer before we start. Dear Lord, we come to before you humbly to share our story, to encourage, and to help those around us, not to make mistakes we've made, to pave the way to make it easier. And we ask that you will inspire us with the right things to say for those what they need to hear in this congregation. We pray this in your name. Amen. So Our journey starts about 25 years ago, and they were smaller than they are now, eh? And there was less of them than there are now. So I know everybody looks at us and say, oh, look at Paul, you got an army. Yes, I do have an army, and it's fantastic. But they weren't always the army. They were like 3 nappies at one stage. Hey, Paul? It was quite challenging. And they were small. But I'm pretty hardcore kind of guy. God says it, I'm going to do it, and we go in country living, no matter what. God says we're doing it. So, but we all have our different approaches. We have different personalities, and there's a different approach for each person. And don't think there's only one approach, and this is the right approach. No, this is the approach someone did. You've got your approach. You older, you maybe just a lady, maybe you got one child, maybe you got a big family. There's different approaches, and we got to look at all those factors. So yeah, let's see. There we go.
Can I just add to that? So before this photograph, we owned another farm in Robertson, and we sold that farm. And Joshua, my oldest son, and myself, we were looking for a new one. That was about 1.5 years. We were looking and looking and looking. We saw our farm, but we went over it. We just passed it. And we came back to it. And this is it over here.
Yeah, so your story is, listening to you, I was just like, you get so tired of looking at properties. You ride, and you're like, and you go through all this land. And you're like, Lord, I just want a little piece. Just a little piece, eh? Nothing. I mean, we were happy to have a hectare. I mean, obviously we would like nicer, but a hectare is, you can support 3-4 families on a hectare if you grow. Believe you me, it's huge. You do not need a huge piece of land to cultivate your own vegetables and for your family. If you had a garden the size of this pew here, and you maybe 3-4 people, you will be able to live out of that garden easily if it's well cultivated. So yeah, country living, you got to think out of the box. It's something different. And I'll start this part of the story because I haven't introduced my wife Pearl, Joshua, the oldest, Luke, second, Timothy, middle child, but Timothy, and then Benjamin, and then Sarah. So you're doing something different, dramatically different to the way you grew up. We didn't grow up on a farm. We didn't grow up homeschooling. I mean, I never even heard of homeschooling when I grew up. No one even thought about it. But we've homeschooled. We've moved on a farm. It's different. And so you've got to start thinking out of the box. We can't think on the normal terms and of how we've always lived and how we've done things. You've got to think out of the box. And, we had our workshop, and we had bought the one farm, and we had sold that farm, and God really blessed us in that. And don't try and finance country property, just by the way. It's very hard to finance country property because of it falls in the gaps. It's neither commercial nor residential, and it's neither agricultural, and so it's very complicated. So God wants us, you've heard the quotes, we're going into the country no matter what. We're going. God wants us there, we're going. And we didn't have money. We didn't even have money in the bank. We were battling to put food on the table because Pearl was also at home with the children. And you can imagine all the young kids, they can eat, believe you. Some of the people here have had the guts to invite us over, and they've seen how much they can eat. So it was expensive. We were really down and out. We had nothing. But we were going, so we bought a caravan, and that's the caravan, yeah. Because we had resolved that we're not going to get a place with a house on it. we weren't going to get that really because it's just too much money. And so we gutted the caravan, and the interesting experience I had was, you can flick through some while I talk, because I can't talk and flick at the same time. Only women can multitask. So, and so some of my rich clients, they would come into the workshop, their cars would be there, because I've got a panel beating business. And they would like, oh, what you doing here, Paul? And then we'd tell them, yeah, we're building this caravan so that we can live in the caravan, because we want to go out, we want to raise our children in the country. And so we're building this caravan. And so we were, we grew up middle class. I grew up here at Helderberg. In fact, I did sub A here, and we lived just off the property here. So, I'm born and bred in this area. Well, not born, but grown up here. And, we were middle class friends. And what I found was interesting is the friends around us told us we're crazy. We're mad. What? You're crazy. You're going to go live in a caravan. And then these super wealthy guys would come in, and I'll tell them our story, and they'd go, wow, that's fantastic, man. Go for it. And we're like, this guy's driving the most expensive car on the market. And what's his problem? But everyone else is like, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. No. And these guys, and then they start telling you their story, and he says, yeah, for 10 years we lived in a one-room apartment. It was our kitchen, our lounge, our everything. And we did this for 10 years. Now this guy's got one of the biggest houses up here on Spanish Farm and property all over, multi-millionaire. And this happened with a number of people. And the reason why I'm mentioning this to you is, could that be the difference? Is people who can see the possibility of potential and they get somewhere, and then us middle class guys who go for a job, they don't have that, so they stay in that area. And that's the conclusion I came to. And so we need to think out of the box, Yeah, Paul?
So 2010, my boys were into filming. They did filming for Eden Life, and they were asked to go to St. David to do Jerry Franklin. This is Uncle Jerry, an amazing man. Sadly, he's passed away, but he did a campaign, a camp meeting, You Can Survive. And when we got back, I knew that we had to get into the country. So we were looking again. And we found our farm. You can carry on. In the middle of nowhere. And you can start it off.
I didn't need that. Awesome miracles. We got this place. You can see the shed there, the house. It's got what we call the schoolroom, in which was in front. In fact, we could have lived in that schoolroom, no problem. The place was run down. You see these old farmhouses that no one's lived in for 10 years, and, they keep the sheep almost in there. That's what our place looked like. Well, here's some of the pictures. We had just miraculously just go back there. Are you talking to me?
So, before we bought this farm, Paul bought me a car, this blue car, an X-Trail, because we've been riding a Fox, a small car. Our big family, we needed a better car. And when we saw this farm, we didn't have money in the bank. So we took my nice car and we sold it and put that money towards our farm. I was sad to lose it, but there was a bigger picture.
Yeah, it's when you're poor and you got nothing, you got this fancy, nice, brand new car virtually. It's quite something to give up, And we bought that car on auction. It had flood damage, and it was amazing. It's a miracle what we paid virtually nothing for the car. I bought a computer box, cost me 2,500 Rand, plugged it in, the car went. It was 100%. We knew what had happened. It had just run into a dam and just the computer, and that car was perfect. And it was like brand new, and we'd picked it up for nothing. But God knew in advance. And if it wasn't for the money that came from that car, we would have never been able to purchase that farm. Okay, so yeah, this is some pictures of, this is what the place looked like before when we got there. Totally, just keep these pictures in mind. Totally run down. No electricity, no running water, no toilets. So like Mrs. Noah, I think Pearl was braver than I was. So we moved into the shed with our caravan. At that stage, we had no electricity yet. We didn't have running water. Just remember, we people that grew up in the city, we didn't grow up in the country. So it's not like we knew all about these things, irrigation and pumping and all these sort of things. But we had to learn. This is us living in the shed. We had 2 caravans. We bought another caravan, very cheap. The boys stayed in there. And Benjamin, Sarah, and Pearl and myself, we would stay in the caravan. That's our table there. That's our lounge, everything, all in this shed. Now, we also moved into this area when it was going into drought. So we've actually come through like almost 7 years of drought out in this area. We've just recently had the best rains we've had in, I don't know how many years, but longer than we've been there. And it gets hot out there. So we moved in there in the middle of this, when was it? December or January?
It was December, before Christmas, yeah.
Sure. I mean, California, we're talking 40, 42 degrees, no electricity, in the shed, and I must say, Pearl.
Just to add to that, when you find a property, God moves very quickly. It's very quick. We saw the property from seeing it to buying it to moving to it. I'm not joking. It was like 6 weeks. It was crazy. It was ridiculous. But it was very quick. And we moved there with our kids, chickens from Grigg. We had a house in Grigg. We had our chickens, our dogs, everything. To nothing. There was no water. There was no electricity. And Paul was going to come back to Somerset West, and I was going to be on that farm by myself with my 5 kids.
Yeah, so Pearl was on the farm, and I would come out on the weekends, and I would drive in, work, and basically they were at the farm, and they started working, and yeah, you'll see what they were up to. So yeah, we lived in our factory. So instead of renting a house in the city, I would throw a mattress down in our office, not a fancy office. Every night, just throw a mattress down and just pass out there and sleep there. And we did this for about 10 years. And sometimes the whole family would be there. It was a very small office. And so there we had a Vito bus that we were fixing up. So there we sleep in, we'll throw a stretcher in the place, pack it up before the staff come. But if I had rented a house for 10 years, I've worked out, it's over R1 million after 10 years that we saved by living in our factory. And it's these kind of things when it comes to working with your money. We need to deprive ourselves now when we've got excess. Now we need to live in depravity. We think, how are we going to do it? Well, maybe if you've got families together, instead of living in, maybe there's 2 families who want to go somewhere, go out in the country. Maybe you can share the house and then buy something, We need to think, we need to start working more together to accomplish these goals. It's not unattainable, but you've got to start thinking, and you need to turn around every cent you get. And I always said, what, I'm sure God allowed us to go country living as an example because we had nothing. I mean, the house we rented at Grigg, that was rented. We didn't have a house we sold and then bought a property out there. We had a factory, and believe me, we lived hand to mouth. Every month we were battling, and we made it. Now we're in a totally different position, and God has been merciful and blessed us. But we started with nothing, It
was hard because coming in when I had to and staying in the factory, it was difficult, I'll be honest. no proper place to just sit and visit with family or friends. So it had its challenges, but we did it.
Yeah, so we learnt about plumbing and all
This
these
was
things.
great.
I mean, we're not plumbers. I've never done plumbing before. But remember, I'm at work most of the time, so the boys were doing a lot.
This was the greatest thing. My boys got to learn about electrical, plumbing, building. It was the best education. That was their education. This farm was their education. And I just say thank you, Lord. It was great.
So yeah, and in this instant, Luke was with this guy, Victor. And his job was to help Victor build the roof, and he was a really nice carpenter guy. I wish we could find him again, but yeah, he was a great guy, stayed on the farm there, and Luke was his handlanger and worked with him. There they're going with the farm. This is some more pictures of the house. So yeah, they're learning to paint, learning to do whatever, polyfiller. Sarah putting her effort in, making sure the camera didn't catch her. Benjamin, yeah, he overworked.
When you work hard, you need to rest.
Yeah, when I grew up, I remember being bored. How many of you people remember being bored as a child? My kids have never experienced one single day of boredom. Seriously. You can ask them. They don't even know what it means. Because it's such a busy lifestyle. There's so much to do. But it's that busyness that keeps you out of mischief, that develops your mind, that prepares you for the future. Work was a blessing for man. Yeah, we have preparing wooden doors. Don't put wooden doors on your house. Okay. Look, we've learned a lot about not what to do. So you can come to us. We can help you not to do a lot of things we did. Okay. Whatever you do in country living, think it through carefully. Get as much advice as possible, and try and do it that you never have to redo it again. Right? Because it's God's money. Because we should be using our money as much for evangelism and spreading the word. So we don't want to waste God's money. So don't be proudful. We as a people, I've found us, we as Adventists, and I include myself, we're proudful. We think we know all the answers. So it wasn't all, we've got this amazing river in front of us, and this was the attraction. This is why we went out into this desert.
So I'm just going to stop you there. We lived in our barn, in our caravan, for 4 years before we moved into this house. And there were some trying times, but it was good because my children built that house. Yeah.
They learn to see nothing becoming something, and that is nothing can replace that. The ability to turn nothing into something is just, it develops the mind for future opportunity to see what you can do. So yeah, we very close as a family. We got a very great passion for family ministries as well. I believe you must be with your children. So whatever we do, everything together as a family. Keep that with that. Country living encourages that. You don't have an option.
And also something important. You must be on the same page as a couple. You must both want to go into the country, not one in the city and one in the country. You must both want to go to the country because it's trying. It's not easy. That just helps.
Yeah, so there's some work.
This was our first vegetable garden. It was a kraal and small little kitties. We've never grown anything in our lives. And we were starting to learn, shall I put it, yeah.
Oh yeah, here's the vegetables coming on. I put this picture in here because we cut this entire tree down using that skill saw. And it's a very cheap skill saw that I bought secondhand. Now we got a nice chainsaw and we could have done it much quicker. But you've got to do with what you have. I mean, cutting that, I don't know, we were crazy. We did some crazy things.
Sometimes we've heard people say, we haven't found the right farm, it hasn't got the right house. You know, you're always waiting for something better. They want the perfect place. You're not going to find it. You'll keep looking.
Hey, you guys must tell me when you guys are supposed to talk. Oh, is it coming? So yeah, this is a time lapse. We were planting some yellow woods over there. Okay, I believe. Yeah, who's talking? Tim, isn't this you? Oh. Okay, well, this is our little tractor, which we got for free. We fixed it up. It was thrown in with another deal. We bought an old digger loader, which we got rid of at the other farm. And the guy said, well, I could have this tractor, because it was like split in half, and we fixed it up. And yeah, we were plowing. And yeah, it's Ben. Tim?
Yeah, so this is just I'm not 100% what you call it, but it's like a sort of tractor thing just with two wheels, and you got to control it with the steering bar there. And there's a little rotavator fitted behind it. And so we were learning to use this thing, but then the clutch broke. So it got a little bit more difficult, because you would use it, and then when you had to turn around, it would literally swing you around trying to turn it. And yeah, so that's just
So something they learned is there's always, it's difficult using the tools. They had to learn how to use them.
And this is some watermelons that we planted and in seed trays, and then we planted out into the field. Next photo. Yeah, we planted in the field amongst the garlic there, and the garlic will be coming up now.
Yeah, so when you plant, we were talking at lunchtime, someone was saying, yeah, the snails come and they bite off your little shoots that come out. It's much cleverer to plant in trays like this, because you can control the environment. So if you're planting, you can plant it in here, and also you can also get a bit of a head start sometimes on the planting season, because you can possibly put a little bit of plastic around. And so it's always clever if you can start your seedlings there where you can keep an eye on them, and then when they're a little bit bigger, then you go and plant them out. And it gives you a lot of advantage, gives you advantage over the weeds, because then what you do is you get rid of all the weeds, you rake. What we found works really well is, so you prepare your bed, but try and prepare your bed, if you can, a month before the time. And then after a week, 2 weeks, all the weeds come up. And then you go and you clean that bed. And if you've got the time, you leave it again. And then the weeds come up again. And then you clean the bed, and then you pop in your big plant. And then by the time your weeds come up, your big plant's there, generally shading the weeds, and gives you such an advantage. It's a very simple process, but if you can do that, it'll save you a lot of trouble. You won't lose as much stuff, and it also saves you on watering, because that little plant there needs very little water. But once you put it in the soil, now you've got to water all that soil. So you can save quite a lot on that. And then, of course, I think, and of course, mulching. So yeah, Josh?
This is Tim.
Oh, is this Tim?
Yeah, this is just some garlic that we were planting. That was just our neighbors busy cultivating the field for us, because our tractor wasn't working. And yeah, so this is basically us just preparing, making beds, and then we planted. It was 500 kilograms of garlic that we planted, and I think it was just under a hectare.
Yeah,
just under a hectare size field. And so yeah, this is just a couple of clips of us planting.
Yeah, so we did this during COVID, because we had a wonderful time in COVID. And this is what we got up to during COVID. We planted this, and amongst other things, because we didn't know what was going to happen, if there was going to be any income after COVID. COVID was a scary time. I mean, you never knew if you were ever going to go back to your work again. So, we planted this garlic. And yeah, we learned a lot from it.
This is a video. I don't know how you start it. No, just go back.
Okay. Yeah, it's a video apparently, but it's not a video. So, yeah. Who's talking here, Luke? Who's talking to this video? This picture?
I think this is supposed to be. This is making the bricks.
Okay. Okay, so we've got this amazing sand on the farm, really coarse sand, which we make bricks with. So this is us collecting the sand in the river. Here we are making bricks. So we built a tank stand that had to carry 2 5,000-liter tanks, which is 10 tons. So we got the bricks tested. Now a normal brick is about 8 to 9 MPa, and ours came out at 22 MPa. So we're blessed with really nice sand on the farm, and yeah, just sand and cement. And so yeah, it's this is what country living is about. It's like you were saying, it's about learning skills you've never done. This is the first time we've done it. Now if they have to one day build a house from something, they know how to do it, and it's fun. This is exciting. It's not boring stuff. So yeah, we are making the bricks. That's what we built from the bricks.
And this is a photo of showing how the grass chokes the trees. Where the grass is, the trees are very small, and where there's no grass, the trees are a lot bigger. And just go through to the next photo. This is the same time the photo was taken, and you can see how big the trees are here where there's no grass. And we found that you need to get rid of the grass. This quirk is very, very, very difficult weed to get rid of. Just go to the next one. This is the recent photo that we just took. And you can see how tall the ones in the back are. There was no grass there, and these ones with the yellow markings, they're not even half the size. So you need to, when you plant trees, to make sure that the grass, you deal with it.
Yeah, so, you need to plan ahead. We just went and we got to have fruit trees. We got to have this, and we just went and we planted, and this is what we got to have. We got to be self-sufficient. But you know what? It's better to do something wrong than to do nothing, right? Because now we can help you guys do it right. Okay. So please, this is our ministry. Come to us, and we will give you advice. But for example, don't plant something unless you can take care of it 100%. In other words, you've dealt with the possibility of quirk. And that's probably, for me, that's my biggest challenge on our farm is quirk grass. It is so hard. And we don't want to spray. But we get rid of it, putting plastic down. But when you initially plant, you should have the plastic down. If you're going to plant, don't go and buy a tree at the nursery. Go and look at where you want to plant the tree. Work out your irrigation, buy your irrigation. Then look at what's the fruit on that tree. If it's apricots or peaches, don't plant the tree unless you're willing to cover it with a net. You're wasting your time. The birds will take everything. So don't have some romantic idea that you can have a peach tree here and a plum tree there and a fig tree here and there, and everything's going to be hunky-dory, and you're going to wake up one morning and the only guys who've eaten is the birds. So plan it. And we've got apricots, beautiful apricot trees. We pulled them all out. We never saw a single apricot because the birds got it. What should have we done? We should have said, okay, here's a corner in the garden. Your stone fruits are going to be attacked by birds. We're going to put a netting around them. Okay? And we work it out. How are we going to do the netting? If you don't have the money there, you can work it out in advance, because it takes a while for maybe 3 years for the tree to start bearing. But your plan must be to cover those trees. You're going to get nothing from it if you don't. And if you're going to plant, make sure you've bought the irrigation, you lay the irrigation there, and you do it down. Do it systematically, do it with well planning, and you will succeed. Let me tell you what, gardening and that is fantastic. I know we make it sound so hard, but it's not actually that hard. If you obey the principles, it's amazing.
But also something that we discovered, when you buy your trees, buy small trees because you can baby them. Don't buy big trees because you spend a lot of money and they can die. Buy small ones and you can nurture them and they'll grow.
Yeah, the biggest, most expensive tree I bought died after a year. It was very hard. It cost me a fortune. So generally buy the smallest tree you can, because what the nurseries do is they grow the tree, a little tree, in little punnets, right? And then when it gets big, they take the punnet and they put it into a 1 kilogram bag. And then when it gets too big, they put in. So the older your tree, the more pot bound it is. So buy a small tree, it will outgrow the big tree in the long run. I can almost guarantee you that. You're going to pay a quarter the price. Like we bought some ponytails the other day. A big ponytail will cost you 300, 400 rand. We bought a little punnet of 6. I don't know, how much was it, Josh? Who bought it, Tim? 25 or 35 rand, but we got 6 instead of 1 plant. You know, so, and your root structure of your plants will develop much better, because when they're in a bag, they get confounded. And let me tell you what, it's actually very hard to find a nursery that cares and will give you good quality plants. Most of them are root bound. I mean, we had one tree, and it grew up, and it was quite a big tree, eh, Josh? Yeah. And it just died. And so we pulled it out the ground. It had choked itself to death. The roots were circular from being in the bag. The roots had been trained to go around. It had strangled itself. I mean, it was probably about that size trunk. The tree just died because of the root structure. So, you know, those are some of the tips. Josh?
And our farm is very hot during summer. So we found that quite a few trees get badly burnt on the trunks. And so we wrap them now with some shade cloth to prevent them from being sunburned, like you can see in this photo. And you can also see how we've mulched that mango tree there very thick, because mulching very thick has so many benefits. The weeds don't come up, the water lasts longer in the ground, you don't have to water as often, and it gets nutrients from as it's decomposing. So that mulch there it's almost like a ruler thickness, a ruler length thick. It's very thick, and we found that's the best on most of our trees. That's what we do now, if we can.
Yeah, it keeps the weed down. It just makes your whole life a lot easier. So if you don't have the mulch, don't get the tree. Get the mulch, get the tree. You know, just get it in the right order. And that covering is essential if you're in a hot place. We've got camphor trees that have never taken off. But if I knew this, those trees would have been huge today, because they were burnt by the sun. Terribly burnt. If I had protected those trunks, we would have had huge trees with them. So, yeah, you'll see the farmers, when they plant the small trees, they do that as well now.
And another thing that we found, we get frost. And so, like that tree that we had that frame over, just go to the previous photo. It's a mango tree, and mangoes don't like the frost. So when they're small, we have these frames that we put around the tree, and then we just put these big sugar bags around, and that prevents the frost from damaging the tree. Now those mango trees are bigger, and so they don't get affected by the frost anymore. So that's what we do for frost.
Yeah, but it's got a lot of other benefits as well. Protects it from the sun. It works really, really well. So you have a few trees, you can make a thing like that. And we don't get a lot of frost, eh? We don't get a lot of frost. So we're not talking about a heavy frost area. But it just helps that little tree that would die when it's small. Once it gets over a certain size, like kiddies, you know, if you let them out on the street and running around, they get ridden over by a car. If you protect them enough till they're old enough, they don't get ridden over by a car. The same with plants. Let it get big enough to where it can actually stand up on its own.
And when we moved to the farm, actually a few months after we moved there, someone from one of the organizations came there for the disaster management and actually said our farm was on a disaster zone because a few years previously they had a flood and it washed away some of the property, and they actually had declared it almost a disaster zone. So we also were able to get the farm at a better price, but then you'll see we're going to put some bags in the river to try and push it out from our property so it doesn't wash away anymore. And you can see here's us busy filling them up. So we're building like a wall out into the river, so when the river comes, it pushes it away from our banks.
Yeah, so now when they declared it a disaster, the government said, no, they can't help, because they said the only solution is to build rock with, to cage the rock across, and there's no rock close enough. So they said, no, Gabion. And so we got these bags, and so we built them across into the river to protect. You saw that bank that was getting washed away. I think about 3 hectares had been washed away by a flood previously. So now you can see where the river is there, and now this is when the rivers come down in flood, and that's what's left of the bags. And that's pushing that whole river across and away from our land. So, you know, you're learning all these things, and it's fun. We love the excitement of the river. We had a huge flood there now, which we don't have too many photos now. But anyway, a massive flood. But it's exciting. The river brings energy. It brings life with it. So playing around, it's like, you know, going down to the beach as a child, and you make your little castles, and well, we get to do it on a bigger scale here, you know. You know, dads and their toys, it's only the price that differs, eh? So yeah, the river came up higher, and so we at the last minute running, trying to throw a little bit more sand on.
You can see over here the river, that's where it used to come when it was in flood. It would come up against our bank there. And then when we built the bags, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, it started to flow on that side, and on this side it was dead water, so it wasn't washing away the banks anymore.
Yeah, so it used to race through there and just chow away at the bank. Now you can see it racing, like Luke says there at the top.
Okay, this is our grapes that we planted. We planted about 300 vines, and we didn't have money for doing the trellising, so we just planted the grapes for in the future to do the trellising. And you can see how big the grapes already were. But here we're putting in the trellising, the anchor poles. So with the anchor poles, when you do a trellis, you need to try and make it as strong. It needs to be strong enough, because for every wire, you might be pulling like 150 to 200 kilograms of force. So for your anchor poles, if you have 12 or 13 wires, you easily can get to 1.5, 2 tons. So you need to anchor them very strong. So we threw a concrete slab at the bottom of this trench here with 12 mil rod bars going through the anchor poles. So our trellises have lasted very well, and you can see the next photos. This is us doing the trellising.
Yeah, and just a note on that before you go on, Josh. You see how clever we were? We came up with all those ideas on our own. No, you can ask Josh. We spent quite a few months looking, because we drive through table grapes on the way to our farm. We saw a farm that we thought was the best run. We went to the guy and we made friends with the farm manager. Yeah. And we went to him and we asked him and we asked him and we drilled that guy left, right, and center. I think we irritated him, but no, he was actually very nice. And that's why it was successful, because he told us, well, this is what you've got to do, this is there, and we went and did it. Go and get advice. We don't need to make mistakes. People like to share their knowledge. People are not selfish, eh? They're not selfish. Some people are, but...
So that's what the grapes are pretty much now. And another thing with the grapes that's very interesting, when we planted them, we haven't done any fertilization or anything. We've had them in for like 8-9 years. When we planted them, we put a very thick mulch, and the mulch has lasted a lot of years, and it kept the weeds down. Like there, you can see there's not many weeds. The mulch is already decomposing there, but it lasted very long, and the grapes did very well. I think this is the before and afters.
Oh, okay, this is the before and after ones. Okay, so this is what the property looked like before, when we got it. And then, I was so proud of these. These were some of the first trees we planted. Oh, man, was I proud of these little trees, eh, boy. We didn't, I remember, man, we got them on special. We couldn't afford them at normal prices. We were so excited. I planted these little ficus trees. Man, I was proud. I remember. I was so proud of those little trees. This is the garden going now. This is what it looks like.
The garden has a story, actually. In 2011, I lost my family in a car accident. My mom, my sister, and my little niece. And it was traumatic. It was very traumatic. And that garden was my therapy. And I got to hear God's voice in that garden. So country living, you get very close to the Lord, and He speaks to you. It was such a comfort. And, we talk about, we in camp meeting, we said miracles, on the farm. One of our miracles was during that process, during that period, we're on this farm and there's no one else. There was no one else. I was by myself with my 5 kids. And I just wanted someone to talk to. There was no landline. We had no communication or anything like that. And I prayed a prayer and I said, Lord, I just need to speak to somebody, because I couldn't talk to Paul. He's at work. And God sent an in-here pastor to our farm to come and pray for me. God hears your prayers. He hears you.
And the other thing we didn't mention, there's no cell phone reception here. You've got to walk up onto the mountain. So they got pretty fit, and it's quite a big mountain. And up there, and if you're lucky, you kind of find a spot and you get a little bit of reception. So Pearl was stuck on that farm there with no reception, and we didn't have Wi-Fi. I mean, those were days when I don't even know when Wi-Fi came around, but anyway, we didn't have it. Luke?
So just to say interesting, is that Luke, sorry.
When we arrived at the farm, there was a few beef woods that they had planted along the driveway, and also some apricot trees. But when we took them out, because we wanted to put some other trees there, they had planted the trees in their bags in the ground. So they hadn't even taken off the plastic bags, and they planted them straight in the ground like that. It was just very funny for us to see.
So that's one of our secrets. When we plant, we always take it out of the bag. You can say you heard it from us. So this is so yeah, you can see someone was saying, well, there's no time to get into the country. We were told when we moved out, I remember, being in the Eden Life group, and, there was people there in that group, and they came to us and said, Paul, there's no time for this. You're crazy. What are you going into the country for? The end's coming. And I remember driving up the pass to our farm with a friend of ours, and he got a message on his SMS, because of course we didn't have WhatsApps in those days. And I remember him saying, "Hey, Paul, look here. I told you, Sunday laws are coming out in the next month or two. It's all over. You're wasting your time here." You know? But that's what the driveway looked like. That's the trees now. So was there time to move? Yes, there was. I mean, those are marula trees. They like this size. And if any of you have had the privilege of tasting Sarah's marula jam, you'll also want to plant those trees. Yeah, that's Luke in his suit. So that's growing up in the country. I mean, this is what kids should be doing, am I right? So this is a before and after. So there's the house. That's what it looks like now. There's the house in the background. You can't see it, all the trees. Oh, geese are wonderful things, guys. They are the most amazing little pets. If you want pets, oh, these guys are so cute. They waddle around our property. We didn't have. Do we have more photos of them at all? Did you guys put them on? They waddle around. They're the cutest thing, man. They are so cuddly, and they're fantastic. And they're protective. You know, they say they're watchdogs. They patrol that. You see them patrolling that whole property of us. Oh, they go all the way down there. They have their like daily duty. They come and tick off on the book. They've done their patrol. And you know what happened the other day? You know, country living has so many exciting things. I'm walking up from that other side there, coming there, and one of the roosters mating on the hen, there we go, hen, thank you. And man, these geese saw it, and they ran to protect the chicken, and they chased the rooster off the chicken. You know, and I just thought they were so cute, you know. Yeah, they are. And these guys are in competition when it comes to food. They don't let those chickens come anywhere near, boy. Those poor chickens, but yeah, they are protecting this chicken. They're thinking the rooster's hurting the chicken. And so they all come running. I just thought it was so beautiful, you know. So,
this is a before.
Okay, so this is what the property looked like before. And yeah, that's what it looks like now. Yeah, that's the driveway. Tell me when you guys are... Okay, yeah.
These are just pictures now.
Tim? Oh, I'm talking about it. Okay, apparently I'm talking about it. Yeah, these pillars here, you see this beautiful entrance we got to the farm. Benjamin and Tim, they built these pillars with the local rock around there. They used form building. Did you put any more pictures of the building of the pillars? No. Oh, okay. But anyway, you know, that's part of their education. That's about country living. They learned, and they built that whole gate system there. And today it's a really beautiful entrance. This is our rock garden. We love our aloes. They're so beautiful. So if you guys have got gardens and you're starting, we can help you, give you some baby aloes and things like that. Let us know, you know, because the lovely thing about God is He doesn't patent His stuff. Isn't it amazing? Every apple you eat has the potential to grow how many apple trees with those pips in there. God doesn't do that. He's not like a selfish man. We want to patent everything. I mean, that aloe will just produce more aloes. Little babies pop out on the side. You break it off, you plant it, and off you go. This is the house, and this is, you know.
This was our first millies and watermelon we planted. We did it with furrow irrigation. So we just made a trench because we didn't have money to buy irrigation. So we just made trenches and then ran the water down the trenches. And the watermelon and millies we got from there were the best we had ever had. And this was the first like kind of farming we tried. And it was a big learning curve for us.
Do you know that something like 65% of the world's produce is still flood irrigation? Yeah? It might even be higher, but like 65% of the world's irrigation is done via flood. If you can do flood, if your property lends itself to flood, it's the best way to water. We have got the best results from flood, eh, Josh?
Yeah, and if you have enough water to flood.
Yes, you do need an abundance, but not that much.
No, not that much.
Yeah, so this is the river. Now, just to give you an illustration of the flood. The flood came to just below that dam wall. Just below the dam wall. So everything green you see here is underwater. You see the nursery? This was my mother's nursery. Mother and father, they put this up. It washed that away. The flood went right to the bottom of where this house is. Now, the one that we had now. You can just see how huge it was. Yeah, this is canoeing on the river. We love water, hence the attraction to the river. This is the aerial photo.
Yeah, fortunately, I was able to learn from my grandpa before he passed away of how to do bees and of how to keep them and rob the honey, which was it was a nice learning curve and something that is very useful on a farm is to have your own beehive so that you can get your own honey.
No, that's marula. Oh, no, that's honey.
No, that's honey.
Sorry, that's honey. Yeah. Thanks, honey. So, yeah, this is our vegetable garden.
I think this is just produce.
Okay, so this is just some of the produce. Are you guys talking? Who's talking? Okay, so broccoli, sweet potato. Sweet potato is something you must plant, eh? Just by the way, we've got a country living group. If you want to be on the country living group, come and give us your name and number. We'll put you on a country living group. We're trying to form a country living group throughout South Africa where we help each other. We need to stand together. Press together, press together. The servant of the Lord tells us, right? We need to help each other. One of the must-haves in your garden is a sweet potato. It literally becomes a weed once you've got it in there. It just grows like nothing. This is squash. Tim?
Yeah, this is just some of the squash we grew. I don't know, out of all of you guys, how much you like vegetables and all of that. But the stuff you'll grow in your own garden will taste way better than anything you'll buy in the shops. We used to take the squash while they were growing on the plants. The smaller ones, you could just take straight off the plant and eat it raw. You didn't need to cook it, and they really taste nice.
Yeah, so that's our attempt at selling squash on our ways to become bankrupt farmers. Yeah, some more produce that we've grown. Yeah, Herbert squash. Yeah, Sarah, she's grown a little bit since then. Carrots. The joys of together growing. And you know what? Your kids might kick and scream and complain about working in the garden, but you're creating an appetite, and they will love gardening later on. Train up a child in the way he must go, and he will not depart from it. You know? It's about appetites. You know, it's like a lot of people say, how do you get your kids to eat vegetables? And why do they love salad and all that? It's about cultivating that appetite with them. If that's what they've grown up with, that's what they're going to love. But if you're going to feed them junk, then they're going to love the junk. You know, it's about creating appetites. And that's why getting out into the country with your children while they're young is urgent. It's urgent because if they get beyond a certain age, once they get over 18, 19, if they've been raised in the city, they're going to just linger, they're going to long to be back there, and this farm's going to be a pain, and they're not going to want to work, and they're not going to help, because it's much easier to play a computer game or go and play tennis or soccer, and now you've got to work in the garden. So get them as young as possible out there to cultivate that appetite. When you've got young children, it's urgent. You can't play around. So that's bananas. Grenadillas, also a great must. We used to have fantastic grenadillas. Olives, oranges, garlic. Garlic is something you must plant. It's very, very easy to grow. Doesn't have a lot of pests, very rewarding. Takes 7 months.
7 to 8 months.
Yeah, 7 to 8 months to think, but it grows very easily. You should definitely plant garlic wherever you are. So this is our garlic at the market. We broke even. And you have no idea how hard it was planting that garlic. You have no idea how much work it was. There's okra. I don't know how many of you know okra. That's a fantastic vegetable to introduce if you're not eating it. Tomatoes, ruby grapefruit. I was saying to someone this afternoon, we talk about how hard it is to grow stuff and everything, but in some ways it's not half as hard as we make out to do. We've got a few ruby grapefruits on our farm, and we've got crates and crates of them. We can't even transport the stuff back from the farm. Some of it we waste a lot of food on the farm because we can't get it back here. We planted too much because we're going to plant, and when everyone else, we'll have a place everyone can go to. Don't plant more than you need. Okay? Plant what you need. Start small, and when you've perfected that small thing, you can duplicate it. Don't go too big. So we haven't given these ruby grapefruits any attention. You can ask them, eh?
Yeah.
We've totally neglected them. They sit there up in the corner of the property. We water them. We don't weed them. We mulch them. Years ago, the mulches lasted. But they just produce the most amazing ruby grapefruits. Crates and crates of the stuff, and we do nothing. So God does, it is rewarding. It is rewarding. Here's some red globe. Mulberries, you got to plant a mulberry tree here. It's an absolute must. Every country place should have a mulberry tree. It's the first to give fruit, and it's exceptionally healthy. And for some reason, the birds don't actually attack the mulberry tree. I don't know why.
Chickens do.
Not too much.
Yeah, our chickens do. They jump. They try and reach. It's quite funny. You watch them jumping up, trying to get the mulberries. They even try and climb the tree to get to the mulberries. And if they see us go to eat the mulberries, boy, they come running it's a race to get there first. Watermelon, the nicest watermelon you've ever eaten. That dry part of the world. That's one thing. If you're in a dry part like we are, if you've got water and things grow, the flavors are just amazing because there's so much mineral content. Is someone supposed to speak to this?
Yes, Josh.
Okay, Josh.
Well, we had a lot of watermelon, but transporting watermelon is very difficult because on our gravel road, if you put them in a trailer, they'll just get damaged inside. So we had to transport in a car, but you can only put so many watermelon. So, we found that it's not a very economical crop to plant if you want to transport long distances, at least for us. This is also a video.
Yeah. Hey?
It's supposed to be a video.
Oh, there we go.
So, someone talking to it?
Well, these are crates of millies and broccoli.
Okay, so that's basically our story. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but Yeah, so for us, we see one of our ministries, one of our main ministries, to help people to motivate and help people to get into the country and to prepare what's coming. So if you want to visit our farm, if you want to get advice, we have an open door. Let us know, we're there for you. If there's any questions, I think we're on time now for Vespers. Pastor Donovan? Is it, sorry, I can't see. Is that 5 o'clock or what is it? Oh, is it dead on 5? Oh, well, we're right on time. Okay, well, while we wait for Pastor Donovan to come, he's going to be taking Sabbath closing. Are there any questions or? Yes.
Thank you so much. This is very motivating. Personally, I tried to go to the country 1996, 97, 98. I came back. I'm still preparing to go back. But I want to ask concerning the education of the children. How do you do it? Do you standardize with what is happening outside? And then what will happen? Do they write exams? Are they prepared for any secular jobs or what? Or do they have specialization? I just need to get...
Yeah, so we've used a broader based education. So we haven't stuck to one system where you pick and choose what you want. And it's almost on a needs base. So as needs arise, you educate in that area. So yeah, they've got their different disciplines that they have interests in. And yeah, and you know, we got a panel beating shop. Luke's now doing solar installation. So we needed, this is like a prime example. We want solar on the farm. And so Luke went out, he's now working for a very nice guy. In fact, he came to last night's meeting. He's not an Adventist. And he's learning solar so that now we know how to do solar installations. And so, you know, there's so much on the go that you're learning as you go. We have neglected maybe the theoretical, not as good as we should have. Remember, there's no one to learn from. You know?
Can I just add to that?
There's not other homeschooling people, and it can be done better than we've done it. But the primary purpose of education is what? Character. You know, that's the primary. The world is not in need of genius. The world is in need of men with character. And that's what we need to give to the world with our children. Are they trustworthy? Are they honest? Are they hardworking? Are they disciplined? Etc., etc. And that must be your focus of your education. I believe we must be excellent. I think we must be the head. We mustn't be the tail. Whatever you do, whatever we do, we must do to the very best of our ability. And yeah, there's other people that have done homeschooling a lot better than us, a lot more structured than us. But it's different for everybody, you know.
We've just done it very differently. Our boys, they've had a practical education. So it's very different to the norm. We've done it very different to the norm.
And it's also a matter of, to do this, they had to, you see everything that's done on the farm. It's not done by me on a Sunday, because that's basically the only time I was at the farm, was on a Sunday. Because Sabbath you can't work. So I come up Friday after work, we spend Sabbath together, I work on Sunday and I've got to rush back. Our farm's 300 k's away, so it's 3.5 hours drive. So a lot of what you see there is not me, it's them. That's their education, that's their learning, that's their tuition. Is it absolutely ideal? I think we fall short in some areas. We're definitely not perfect. And I would have liked to given more theory, but you know, Steve Jobs, you know who Steve Jobs is, right? He made a statement. He said if he had his life over, he would go to university at the age of 30. He said he would not do it the way he did it. He would go to university at the age of 30 because then he knows what he wants. He's got these life skills, And you can, so I would like my boys to get if they want, to get a degree if they want. But now they're in a position where they can decide what they want to do with their lives. And now they can channel it into something they want to do. And, you know, when you do that, you learn much quicker. You retain much better, because most of education today is cramming to get your exam, to get what you want, to get a job. It's not from the motivation of, I want to serve. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. But when you've got this passion, when you've got this thing that you want to serve, that's when you will learn the quickest and the greatest and retain that information so that you can serve your community. Donovan, it's over to you. We're on time, eh? Well, thank you for taking the time to listen.
Sabbath closing, and then we'll spend the next session at 6 o'clock out in the foyer, the Q&A. With, if you're hungry, there'll be some soup available as well. So let us just say a prayer now. Dear Lord, we thank you for the testimonies that have been shared. Lord, I pray that you would guide each one of us in our own experience. Lord, that you would guide us step by step into your will for our lives. Lord, as we have a short break now, we pray for your continued blessing in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks so much. So 5:30 we'll be back in the church.